specialize in. I ended up going and specializing in suicide treatment. I would have never said that. Like, that was not on the radar. So yeah, it's funny how life works and where life ends up taking us. But I will say all of these things speak deep to my soul. So I've spent the past couple years specializing, just sitting with individuals every day who are struggling with suicidality. And, man, I'm not afraid to go into the depths of the darkness with people and bring the light. What I've learned, we all have core needs as humans, non-negotiable. These core needs that we have are non-negotiable, and that is to be seen, heard, known, and loved, essentially. It goes deeper than that, but that's the basis of it. That's connection, all those things. And then we need to feel significance. We need to feel like we're living a meaningful life, like we're contributing, like that we feel significant in the larger part of society. If we don't feel belonging and significance, that's what causes this, and I can get into this whole other area, but this soul disrest, this soul dysfunction. And had we not walked through these hard things that we've walked through in life, we wouldn't know the other side. We wouldn't, honestly, you can't know the light if you don't know the darkness, right? Just as far dark as you've gone, that's like just as far light as you can feel. Because once you experience that, it's like, whoa.
Lindsay Taylor, how are you?
Gosh, so good. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah, super excited. I think the first time we talked on the phone for like 2 hours, it was like, man, so much synergy.
We did. I don't know that was weird. I was like, how did we just spend that much time talking? It was awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So many life experiences. One of the many things I pulled from our conversation was we are both working with a population of people that we either never were or never thought that we would be working with.
Isn't that the truth? Wow.
Right?
Yes. I never thought about it that way.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Like I never, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you were probably never in 9th grade talking to people about what you were going to do when you grow up and said, this is the population I'm going to choose to work with.
No, I actually, it's funny. I always say that. So, obviously I have a heart for those in prison. I have a deep heart for those who are addicts. And I always say I'm the most sober person I know. So that obviously is weird. And then I never, if you would have asked me when I was younger, what are you going to specialize in? I ended up going and specializing in suicide treatment. I would have never said that. Like, that was not on the radar. So yeah, it's funny how life works and, where life ends up taking us. But I will say all of these things speak deep to my soul. So there's something in my soul that resonates with this, whether I've walked it personally or not. And I have walked it personally in other ways, not directly myself, but obviously, with my son. So, but yeah, life is taking me on a wild ride with all this.
I think that's so cool. Which came first? Was it like the addiction or was it the suicide? Walk us through that pedigree of your professional existence.
Yeah, so I'm a social worker. So I started out in child welfare, and that was the first time that I got experience working with birth parents who were struggling. Many of them were in the system because they were struggling with addiction. And I knew, like, very early on, I thought that I went into child welfare wanting to help the kids. And of course, that's important too. I loved working with the foster kiddos. But I surprisingly, through that, found that I had a heart for the birth parents. Like, man, I just saw them and their struggle and just really wanted to help them heal to then be able to be parents again. Because what I saw was a deep love. Like, these parents had love for their children, but the addiction was so strong and it was keeping them from being able to be the parents they wanted. So I wanted to help them get there, to like be able to have belief in themselves, recover, get their kids back, that kind of thing. So started out in that, and then I ended up moving into adoption, like private adoption, so case managing birth parents that were choosing to place their child for adoption. But again, many of them were choosing this because they were struggling with addiction. And that was the first time through that job that I really got experience working with people who were homeless. Most of them were on the streets, on drugs or substances. And then many I worked with had been incarcerated or were kind of in and out. And so that's when I started going into the prisons. And I'm telling you, Travis, I saw who they were at like a soul level, like beyond their past, their mistakes, their pain, whatever it is that they did, that they've done, that led them to where they were. I just saw beneath the surface. And these people, honestly, so many of them were amazing. Sure, I mean, you meet some that you keep your distance from. I mean, I'm not saying,
Of
there's
course.
obviously hard things out there, but my point is, like, so many of these people are just like you and I, they just and I often thought when I would actually hear their stories, like people would share their stories with me, I thought, man, like if I had been through half of what they had been through, I would probably be in the same situation, And so I just had such a deep heart for them, such a deep compassion, just like our shared humanity. Again, I also didn't see myself necessarily different or better. Like, yeah, maybe I hadn't walked the path they walked. Maybe I wasn't, quite making the decisions they were making. I hadn't been through maybe the trauma they went through, like I said, that I would have been in their position. But regardless, I'm still human. I've still faced hardship. I'm still broken, like living in this fallen world. And so I carry these broken pieces within me. And so I really related to the brokenness of being human and the hard parts of life, And so anyway, that job was where I really got experience with that. And then I went into school social work and started working with teens, loved that. Every population I've worked with, I've loved. I just recently had this conversation with somebody. I'm like, I haven't yet found the population I don't love. I don't know. I think it's just because I love people, and that's everybody, all ages, all backgrounds. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I worked with adolescents, and that was the first time, sadly, it was through the COVID time, and so many people's mental health, and especially our teens and our kids were really affected, was really tanking. And so many of them were suicidal. I was dealing with a lot of suicidal teens. And so that was the first time that I really got experience sitting with individuals who were suicidal. Through that experience, I lost a student that I was really close to, so that deeply impacted me. That would, fast forward, set me on a path of our school district that I was working for would bring on the first of its kind suicide treatment center. So there was only one in the nation at the time in Ohio. And our school district here in Little Chandler, Arizona, was desperately looking for a solution. We were losing kids, way too many kids. And so the District of Counseling and Social Services brought in this center called the Hope Institute. And I ended up feeling the nudge from God. I was not planning to leave the school. I loved my job. It was actually really weird. Like, I almost had to no, God, I don't want to. But God's like, yes, this is where you're going. And I was like, okay. So that would lead me to become the clinical director at the Suicide Treatment Center. And so I've spent the past couple years specializing just sitting with individuals every day who are struggling with suicidality. And, man, I'm not afraid to go into the depths of the darkness with people and bring the light, really. Bring the light means love them, see them. That is what I've learned is my gift and what I'm here to do. And so, yeah, I go to that battleground and sit with people in the darkness and just try and bring the light. So, yeah, it's a little bit about my background. And then I've personally walked a tragedy, and we can get into that. But through all this work that I've done, personally, I've also walked some of these deep battles.
Yeah, big time. I was just listening to Simon Sinek, and he talks about this. He says, I took a phone call, and my friend, I call my friend, and she says, how are you? And he says, I start to tell her, I'm not in a good place. I'm not good. And she says, okay, why? And he starts to tell her, and then she starts to interrupt him. And she says, she's giving him, from a good place, solutions, right? Mm. And he carries on in this conversation, but he says, we should step back with people and ask them, do you just want me to sit with you, or are you looking for advice?
Yes.
And
yes.
I'm curious with what you've done. You say you sit in the darkness. I would assume, you can correct me, that a lot of your day is not necessarily fixing oh, you came in suicidal, you're going to go out happy.
No, I don't. If I had that kind of power, I mean, that would be amazing. I mean, of course, I want to solve these issues. I don't want to struggle with those things. So yes, I mean, I wish.
Right.
No, what I've learned, we all have core needs as humans, non-negotiable. These core needs that we have are non-negotiable, and that is to be seen, heard, known, and loved, essentially. It goes deeper than that, but that's the basis of it. And so that is what I go into every single session with. And then when they're ready, if they're ready to work through it, great, then we get there. That's the goal, is to get there so that we can work through it. We're trying to ultimately get them out of that space. But first and foremost, you have to see people, you have to hear people. They need to feel cared about, loved on. And so I always meet people where they're at and just, pick up what they need. And I love what you said too. Sometimes I will directly ask if I'm not sure, like if I'm not sure if they're wanting like help, like a tool right now for this, or if they're just wanting me to listen. Sometimes I'm having a hard time deciphering. And so I'll straight up ask them, like, do you need me just to listen in this moment? Or do you want to talk this through? And that's powerful because people know what they need. And then when you're like giving that to them, they feel seen, right? Like they're like, wow, she's considering what I need in this moment. And so I will tell parents sometimes, because I've also done a lot of like parent-child dynamic coaching when there's hard to I've lived that personally too, very personally, so I understand it. But I always say, ask your kid, do they need a tissue, a toolbox, or a cheerleader? So do they need encouragement? Do they need you just to listen is the tissue? And a toolbox would be, do they need solutions? Ask them first, because so often as parents, we're also quick to just, our kid has a problem, here we go, we have the solution, But no, maybe they just need encouragement, or maybe they just need us to listen. So yeah. That resonates.
A tool. I'm writing this down.
Yeah.
Issue, a toolbox.
A cheerleader.
That's incredible. Where'd you come up with that?
Gosh, I heard it somewhere along the way. I don't even know who I can give credit to for that. Actually, I know who I can give credit to. My son, when he was getting into trouble and was in a diversion program. He had got caught at this time. It was and he's also underage, so it would have been an issue anyway, but marijuana was still illegal here in Arizona. Yeah. And he had got caught with a weed pen at school. But it was an extra big deal because that was a felony at the time here. And so he had to go through a diversion program. And we as parents had to take a course. Oh, what was it called? It was phenomenal. Positive parenting, maybe? Okay. Don't quote me, but I think something like that. And the lady that taught it, that's what she said in that class. She said, ask your kid, do they need, that's where I learned that. And so that stuck with me, and I teach it to my clients, and yeah, amazing.
Cool. That's incredible. I love that. I think that there's not enough. Have you heard that idea? Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Mm-hmm. So have you heard that idea that's been spun out there recently, that he got it all wrong?
No, I haven't heard that. People think he got it wrong.
Oh yeah, it's super interesting. So he talks about his social and physical and but the conversation is that if Maslow considered that we are both individuals and part of a group, that he would understand that nobody has ever died because they were hungry. And so what he walks them through is he goes, how many people do you know that have committed suicide because they were starving? Nobody. But how many people are committing suicide because they're lonely or they're sad, or fill in the blank? So if hunger were the most important based on his needs list, it would prove wrong based on the data of society, because we're actually losing more people because they're offing themselves, taking themselves out because of all of these things that come from being part of a group.
Ooh, wow.
I know, right? And so he said, yeah, I know. So he goes, if you actually look at like us being part of a group, not just one-on-one, okay, one-on-one, I have to take care of myself, I have to make sure I'm fed. But if you look at me as part of a group and you look at us as a whole, as creatures, then more people are actually losing themselves, not because of hunger, but because of other deeper issues.
Oh, it's so true. Okay, so this reminds me, I recently have done a couple trainings and webinars on this idea that it's Alfred Adler's work. It's called Adlerian psychology. It's based on Adlerian psychology. And he talked about, at the core, what we need as humans is belonging and significance. Yeah. So we need to belong, we need that's connection, all those things. And then we need to feel significance. We need to feel like we're living a meaningful life, like we're contributing, like that we feel significant in the larger part of society. If we don't feel belonging and significance, that's what causes this, and I can get into this whole other area, but this soul disrest, this soul dysfunction. And what suicide is ultimately is soul exhaustion. It's a soul that's looking for rest, a soul that needs rest. And sometimes the only solution people see to get that rest is escapism, to die. And so I don't think it's actually that people want to die, that they want permanent rest. They just want rest for their soul. And sometimes they're so desperate, they don't know how else to get it. And so going back to those core, what I was saying, those core needs. So part of the known, loved, heard, seen, known, loved, part of what's on there is belonging and significance when you get deeper into it. And so again, if we don't feel belonging and significance, then that's going to cause fragmentation in our soul. It's going to cause disrest, exhaustion. That is then where addiction lives. We turn to all these different things, and that I can go on a little deeper, basically how we're body, soul, and spirit. And a lot of issues come in when we let our body and our soul lead, and we're not connected to spirit, because spirit is where truth is. Spirit is where we will be fed, where our soul will get the rest that it's seeking. All of those things have to be in sync, but we have to understand what's happening in our bodies and what's happening in our soul, and then how connecting the spirit piece to that goes into whole healing. So there's a whole thing to that. I know I'm getting a little bit, but yeah.
No. It's good. It's good. No, you're not. No, I'm totally tracking. I know, and I think everybody else will. I think, you and I deal with a lot of individuals who've had a lot of pain and a lot of trauma, right? And so I think I sat with a gentleman yesterday who was adopted at 3 weeks old. And this was 30 some years ago. And, I think his father was African and his mother was in Georgia. And so a black baby, and this is 3+ decades ago, he was adopted by this older white couple. And so it's very interesting to hear his story of life as he was adopted. And just recently he's come in contact with his birth mother, and it was his mom, as he calls it, his mom's, nudging and finding.
Wow.
And I know, right? And so him and I, we sat and we compared and we contrasted his life because of this adoption, he and I were sitting across from one another. Because of this adoption, he's traveled the states in the world. Because of this adoption, he's lived, a very good life, right? And so he's I don't want to use the term struggling, but he's contemplating, how do I go and have this conversation with this woman who put me up for adoption when I don't know that I'm really upset or angry about it, but the world, society, culture, my 2,000-year-old brain tells me that I should be asking her these questions. Why did you give up on me, Lindsay? Why did you give me up for adoption, right? Like almost angry, right? And so he's got this in his mind, like, I've lived this really good life because of her choices. And so I don't know that I can go there and have this dialogue with her and really like have any dialogue, because my life has been so good. But yet all of this culture, is telling me that I should feel like I've been slighted.
Okay. So I want you to think for just a minute, everybody listening, if you're a parent, you'll be able to understand this. So, and if not, you'll follow. But like, if you're a parent, you'll really get this in your heart. You as a dad, right? Like, let's say there, for whatever reason, you couldn't have your kid, you couldn't keep your kid. I don't think anything, like I said, whether you're on drugs, whether it's because you're really young and that's why you're doing adoption, or, maybe times are hard and financially, like you're just like, I can't support this kid, whatever the reason is, that love you have for your child. Like, you understand how deep that is. Moms, dads, we all understand that deep, deep love. So in order for me to give up my child for adoption, I don't care what the circumstances are, like that takes an insurmountable amount of love to do something like that, to place my child in somebody else's hands. Talk about the courage. I honestly can't imagine having to do that. Some people, like, let's say addiction is the reason they're having to do it. Sure, DCS might get involved and their child might be taken from them. But to choose to place that child for adoption instead of going that route of DCS and maybe trying to get your kid back or whatever. I'm saying DCS, like people, I don't know, Department of Child Safety, it's called different things in different states, but Child Protective Services. So To make that decision to place your child in somebody else's arms is the greatest act of love I think a parent can do, especially because I did not have a single birth mom not say that they knew that they knew they were making the right decision. They knew that their child was going to have a better life, even though they didn't want that for them, because their hearts just wanted their child, of course.
Yeah.
But even in their addiction, even in their circumstance, they wanted that kid to have a good shot at life. That is love. We need to see it differently. That's not at all. I mean, I think
That's a
I
whole
see it way
different
differently, but
paradigm.
I hear what you're saying. Society doesn't see it that way.
No, it's a whole different paradigm shift. But it's also, it's so similar, because I can't tell you how many guys I sit across from who go, prison saved my life. And that, Lindsay, that is such an uncomfortable thing to say out loud in the wrong circle.
It's so true. Oh, it's so true. I know. I feel that. Gosh. I think it's, there's these realities, but we all have our own perceptions, based on life and the things around us and the world around us and the people that we interact with. And so when you think of the collective whole, like when this is how everybody views things, like it makes sense that we don't see things maybe the way that they actually are. That like going to prison sometimes is what you need to be the wake-up call that you need, right? Placing your child for adoption, even if it's not something that you definitely wanted to do, right? But it's something that you did because you knew that your child would have a better shot at life. Like that's not a I gave you up. I always said, you're not giving your child up. You're giving them more. That's what you're doing, right? Yeah. But I get it. Society and how people view things. And Travis, you and I talked about this, and I don't know if we want to go here on this. I'm almost afraid to go here. Okay, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm almost afraid to go here because I never want it to be twisted, distorted, misunderstood, right? Because I get how society views this. I do. And I'm not saying I even it comes higher than me. The wisdom that I feel with this and the I swear it's not me. You know what I mean? I'm just the vessel. But we talked about this when you and I talked. So when you said that to me, they're afraid, prison changed my life. What crossed my mind in that moment was when I told you that I have a heart even for people who have done what we would consider probably the most horrible things you can do, like child molesters, pedophiles, those crimes that really, when we hear that, it's it sits heavy. It's just the reality. I believe that they're not beyond saving either, that they don't deserve to belong and feel significant and loved and seen. And I mean, right? I don't believe they're beyond that either. That does not mitigate their crime, what they did. So I also am all for, our system will take care of the punishment and what needs to happen with that, or the consequences. We need to be accountable to those things. And we obviously can't have certain people on the streets until they're rehabilitated, until they're healthy. So listen, as a mom, I know I say this and I think about it. I'm like, oh, if that happened to my kid, it would be awful. It would be hard, right? I also know God does not, there's nothing that's beyond saving, nothing that's beyond forgiveness. I know that. God has just really put that in my heart and on my heart. And so, what I want to do for those people too is bring them the light and love of God, that you can be forgiven, you are loved. And oftentimes, if we really want to get into it, I mean, there's cycles and history. I mean, sometimes these people, they were perpetrated on. And so, I mean, there's all kinds of things to this, but I'm not even here to definitely not justify. I just think I say that, and I told you, I have to be really careful where I say that sometimes, because I get it. Some people have very strong, I mean, even those in prison, I know those in prison, right? They don't tolerate that. They won't, put up with people like that. And, but I've said this in a church group one time, and there was a guttural, by people when I said that I believe that they can be forgiven. And so anyway, I'm going there just because what you said, sometimes it's hard to say these things, but I just feel like God's telling me to say it.
No, it really is. And I said this the other day on the podcast, it's always interesting to bring, I enjoy personally, in my faith, bringing in a biblical perspective in today's world. And the biblical story that I brought in, was the David and Goliath, because it's easy and everybody's heard it, right? And so when you put it into modern day context, and you're like, okay, Lindsay, like there's this group that's come into Chandler and they're just going to murder everybody, your kids included. And then like some crazy goofball from Mesa rolls in and is like, don't worry, I'm going to murder him. And we like are like, yeah, you should murder him. Like, let's applaud you. Like, you really start to put it into today's context and you sound crazy, right? But
Yeah.
if you look at it biblically and thousands of years ago, and David and Goliath and faith and test, there's a million, metaphors and analogies we pull from this story. And so I share all of that to say, like, I'm just curious how, 2 days, 2 years, 2,000 years from now, these conversations are going to be viewed. How are we sitting with these people in order to make sure that they come out better, they come out rehabilitated? I'm not advocating whether cocaine is better than heroin or I don't really want to get into the minutia. Like, if you give your kid up at 3 days, is it worse than at birth? I don't know. And I don't know that I care to be, but like, if these people are coming back to be your neighbor and my neighbor and in your church group and my church group, and well, sure as shit, we need to make sure that they're healthy.
Yes.
And we could probably agree that the way that it is now, the system, quote unquote, is definitely not producing healthy individuals after they get let out.
No. Go back to what I just said. Humans need to feel belonging and significance. Is that what they're getting in prison? A lot of times it's inhumane.
Yeah.
How they're being treated.
Yeah. Well,
right?
The significance is so, it screams. When I go inside, try not to out this guy. So when the gang members have like numbers on their face, that delineates their number, delineates their murder count. Those are the individuals that I try to reframe, and I go, look, the reason you rose in the ranks was because of your dire need for belonging and significance.
Yes.
And so it really is. And so
that's
I'm like, if you could reframe this and you could understand that you could pour into other people, right? The best way to get out of your own way is to pour into somebody who has the same problem as you.
Yes.
And so instead of turning this into the gang, like if you can turn this into a landscaping company and you're pouring into, like, it doesn't even matter what it is. Like, we could be breeding dogs, but if you can pour the belonging and the significance that you felt from those numbers on your face and your throat into something substantial, you would be unstoppable.
100%. Oh my gosh. And life, it's a battlefield, and we have the darkness and we have light. We have the enemy, right? We have God. And so like, I also feel like, who are we fighting for? And I think a lot of times it's just we're on the wrong battlefield, right? We're believing the lies. I heard somebody say this recently that, it was in a sermon, because we have a prison ministry at our church, and it was on it was called Battle Ready, and it was talking about, the breastplate of righteousness. How do we armor up, right, to fight this darkness that does exist out there, that led all these guys into prison, or all these women, both. And he said it was the enemy's greatest weapon is mental, like to feed us lies. That's like the greatest weapon. If he can get us to believe a lie, then that can destroy our whole life, right? And so he's like, a lot of these guys, he talked about how he had this moment where they were in the prison, but this inmate is singing this gospel song, and in that moment he's like, I forgot that I was in prison. Like, I forgot that we were, like, it felt like freedom. Like, this guy's voice and just like the worship and the Holy Spirit, the presence, he's like, it felt like freedom. And he said, but I looked around and I realized that like what led every single one of these guys here was a lie that they believed, right? And so I think that often is, it's like, it's just, unfortunately, it's not who somebody is. Like, it's a lie that they believed that got them there. It's the enemy, the darkness that came in and took a hold, right? And they probably at some point believed that they didn't belong, that they weren't significant, maybe because of their trauma or how they grew up, whatever it is, right? But like, when you really unpack all of this, it's at the root of it. That's why people are there. It's not because they're bad people. It's because they believed a lie. The enemy got a hold, right? Like, all these things. And there's also a light that saves and restores, right?
That's so fascinating. You're totally right. With as much work as you've done with with moms and adoptions, and there's this gal, her name's Savannah, and she tells a story. So I know I can repeat it and she won't be upset when she sees this, but she tells the story that I'm going to say a handful of years ago, at least a decade plus, she went to prison and she remembers being handcuffed while she's pregnant, being handcuffed like while she's having that baby. And like the lowest, the lowest moments, if you will, right, of society. And it's so interesting. Fast forward, years later, she's done a ton of healing, has a significant other that's fantastic, and they have a little one that's thriving. But Savannah is now going back in to the women, going back into those situations that are ugly and horrible and distorted. And she is that light that you're talking about, right? Yeah. Like, it's hard to deny. I wouldn't say hard, it's impossible to deny that she was supposed to go through that so that she could come back and bring the light to all those other women.
Purpose. You're talking about purpose to pain. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. It's huge. I mean, had we not walked through these hard things that we walked through in life, we wouldn't know the other side. We wouldn't, honestly, you can't know the light if you don't know the darkness, right? Like just as far dark as you've gone, that's like just as far light as you can feel, because I mean, once you experience that, it's like, whoa, and so that's purpose to pain right there. And that, I think, is what adds to like our wisdom and this shared humanity of like what this life is all about and what we're here to do. And I think that's, to be the hands and feet of Jesus and to bring that light, into the world. And yeah. Wow, that's cool.
Talk about your pain.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Man.
I mean,
Gosh.
it served you.
I know. And honestly, if you saw my social media earlier today, grief was hitting me hard this morning. And it just is. It's one of those things. It comes in waves. And yeah.
How do you deal with it? Before I don't want to wash over that, because you're gonna have tons of people who are sitting in grief at the moment. Like, how do you? People are looking at this, you look perfect, your life is perfect. And so how did you deal with today's grief?
Okay, so I don't know. I just got on and started recording this morning driving to the gym. The gym is my outlet. And I was on my way to the gym, and my soul was feeling tired today. That disrest that I was talking about, I was like, gosh, I just feel tired, and not like physically, like soul. Like my soul is like, I'm just tired. And there's a lot going on it's life, right? We have a lot going on right now. Yeah. Most humans do. And so there's a lot going on. So I wasn't sure why I was feeling that way, but I was like, I'm sure it's just culmination of these things. And so the biggest thing for me that I've always done, even you wouldn't believe how much I'm talking about God now. Just 4 years ago, by the way, I was like, wanted nothing to do with Jesus. So that's a whole nother story. But I just want people to know, like, I'm not like this lifelong, God lover, Jesus lover. Yeah. So anyway, actually, that's why God got a hold of me right before my tragic thing. So anyway, God's amazing. But so one thing I've always been good at, though, is keeping my heart open. So I know that if I suppress, if I stuff, like that doesn't help us heal. That doesn't help us process things. And so I just kept my heart open to like, okay, what is this about today? And so I went to the gym, and the gym is awesome because it does help me. It gets things out. I can process things sometimes at the gym. And so I'm just allowing myself to feel it as I'm going through my workout. And then I got on cardio. And all of a sudden, I felt the grief, like my son. I was like, I just like miss him. Yeah. And so I put on his playlist, his memorial playlist that we played. And I just like listened to the songs as I did cardio. And I just like allowed it to like move through me. Like as I was literally walking, like just like let the grief, like feel the sadness. There was a few times I almost like burst into tears. And you know what? I found myself holding it back. Maybe because I worry, like, if somebody around me sees me crying, like, I don't know, sometimes that makes people uncomfortable. I'm just being real right here. I actually thought about that. I'm like, why am I holding this in right now? Why do I not want people to see me cry? I don't know. I'm trying to make them.
I will stop you. At the gym, I listened to this exact, Simon talked about this, and he said, culturally, we have set ourselves up to continuously be fine. We've lied about it. And we've said that if I'm not allowed to tell you that I'm not okay because somehow by me not being okay is going to affect your not being okay. And he said that you can have completely different ideas. I'm allowed to sit with you in the mud and be totally okay when you're not okay, and vice versa. But what you were going through right there, I would bet you, is that like, I don't want anybody else. It's not that you were ashamed of it or afraid of it with your personality. I bet you were like, I don't want anyone else to feel uncomfortable because I'm sobbing.
Exactly. That was it. Like, and here's the funny thing. I know that I don't feel uncomfortable when I'm sitting with people in their darkness and their
Right.
grief. And so I don't know why. It's like,
Right.
you know,
And
I
nobody on planet Earth would have, if they would have actually, which few and far between, like they would have had to know your first name to actually walk up to you if you're crying. But if someone actually approached you, you know, on the treadmill at a 6 incline, which would have been awkward, and been like, why are you sobbing? And you would have been like, oh, because I'm grieving the loss of my son, who, like, nobody in their right mind would have been like, okay, well, like, Godspeed, let's, right? Like that, it's almost like when, and Simon alluded to this, he doesn't really get into his faith very much, which is interesting to me, but he said it's almost like we're denying people the opportunity to sit with us in the mud.
So true. And how do you think that would shift, going back to like, we're really looking at different perspectives here. This whole talk is like, if somebody saw me doing that, maybe that's what they needed to be like, to feel safe. Like maybe they're holding a lot in too. It could go around that way too, you know?
That's the biggest, you know, that's the number one way to get out of your own depression, is to find somebody struggling with the exact thing you're struggling with and to pour into them, because then they start to come up with solutions and you start to be their cheerleader. And now all of a sudden you have tools and resources and you fix yourself. But yeah, no, it's
So I was aware to that. Like I was aware to that. I'm like, why am I holding it back? But I was just like, that's what was coming through, was like, I was just trying to keep everybody around me comfortable.
Okay.
And so I went in the sauna right after and I was continuing listening to a couple of songs. And there's this one song, I shared it at my book launch because I wrote a book about all this. And I guess I haven't said it fully, but I lost my 17-year-old son to fentanyl 4 years ago. And so I wrote a book, and there really is, I mean, it was very revealed to me through that experience that there's something far beyond our human comprehension to all our lives and stories. And that's really where I learned that there's purpose to pain. And that was, God really revealed that to me. And so there's a lot there to unpack. But when I was releasing my first book, where I tell my story, The Rise of a Soul Soldier, I released it. It just so happened, it wasn't necessarily planned this way, but the timing that I was done with writing and editing was right around May, and his passing anniversary is May 9th. So I was like, that's the day I'm releasing it. It just lined up. You know, I don't think it was a coincidence, obviously. So it was that day. So it was the 4-year anniversary just a couple of months ago in May. And I shared this song. It's called 21 Years by Toby Mac. He's a Christian artist, I think kind of pop, rap, whatever. And at the very end of the song, the lyrics say, because he lost his son to fentanyl. He lost his son the same way. And his son was 21. It says, 21 years makes a man full grown, 21 years with a beautiful loan, 21 years I loved everyone. Thank you, Lord, for my beautiful son. And that right there, like, grief is ultimately love. Like, where there is grief, there was meaning, there was love. And how lucky am I, or something that I love so much that was so hard to say goodbye to lose. And so if anything, I have learned, whatever the grief is, like, I'm just grateful that there was something meaningful. And I could apply this to like leaving my job. When I just left a couple of months ago, the suicide treatment center. And it was because at the root of it, I wanted to be home with my kids more. It was taking too much time for my family, but it was hard to make that decision. Like, I love the work that I do. There was a grief process involved with that. Even though I made that decision, even though it wasn't a death loss, like, there was grief. And I thought the same thing. Like, God put that on my heart one morning when my heart was feeling heavy with grief of leaving that. And it was like, because this meant something to me. There was meaning here. And so then I was like, how lucky am I that I have something so hard to say goodbye to walk away from. And so that right there, like, so I was listening to that song to like just kind of in the sauna, finish up my processing at the gym, and tears were coming down my face, but nobody could see me in the sauna. And that part right there, like, I just, we are loaned this life. Like, it is our kids. I mean, how lucky are we that we have them? And we're not guaranteed to have them forever. And that's with anybody in our life, our spouses, our parents, and I don't know. So I realized though, I discovered through the gym today that it was grief. I was really missing Alex. And so, yeah.
Man, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
When you're talking to the parents, I mean, fentanyl is just a nightmare. When you're talking to parents that are, I mean, you didn't come from a fentanyl background. You know, you're educated, you're well-read, there's all of the data points don't line up to your life, to Alex's outcome. And so when you look back at that, like, what's the advice to the parent? What's the conversation? Like, and maybe there isn't anything, maybe there wasn't any red flags, but like, now that you look back and you go, okay, if you have a 16, 17, 18-year-old, like 19-year-old, 20, like, here's the things that I wish I would have seen. I wish I would have done. I wish I would have asked. Like, is there any of that comes to mind?
Oh, yeah. So first and foremost, I want to say this. Not a single one of us is immune. That's it. I mean, I could fall off the tracks tomorrow and try fentanyl. I mean, I'm just saying, like, you know, like, I'm just saying, like, not a single one of us is immune to this. So that, first and foremost, I think, again, we walk through life thinking we're immune to these things. You know, I mean, of course, we don't want to think about the reality of the potential that we could lose a child. So that's first and foremost. But Alex, so just very quickly, I'm not his biological mom, but we raised him. So I've been in his life since he was very little, raised him since he was 3, almost 4. And I always say, when I bring up this situation with his mom, you know, he really at the root of it struggled with the abandonment of his biological mom. There's that innate connection. We talk about adoption, all those things that people struggle with. So not having that was a really struggle for him, deep seated. But I always honor her in this story because she did the best she could. She's had her own struggles that led her not to be able to be there. But so Alex though, so there you go. That was kind of the root of some of his, I guess, lacking, feeling some of that love that he missed out on that from his biological mom. And so, and then raising him, you know, I was mom. I mean, everybody considered me mom, and, you know, and I never, ever have called them like my stepkids. They've always been my kids, because he has a brother too, who is not mine biologically. And I did the best I knew how, but as a bonus mom coming into it, man, I was 18, by the way. I just mentioned that as well. So I was very young when we started raising him. And there was a lot of things looking back that I wish I would have done differently, that I think would have helped. Like, I didn't know how to handle some of like the trauma and attachment struggles that he was dealing with, you know. I was so young myself. I always say, I wish I knew everything I know today, right now, talking to you. Sure, I'm well versed because I'm 36 years old at this point, so I have a little bit more life under my belt, but I also have more education, more experience professionally, and more experience as a human and as a mom and all the things, right? So I always say I did my growing up with Alex. And I guess what I would say to the parents out there is, you know, we think as parents, my way of parenting, because I just wanted him to be a happy, healthy individual. And so my way of parenting was kind of how my parents parented. It was pretty like, these are the rules, this is the structure, it was more like authoritarian, I would say. Not like, you know, rigid, like military, but I'm just saying, like, and he needed a softer approach. And I think I've learned so much. That's a whole nother topic about parenting and the sweet spot of how we need to be as parents. But my point is, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, I think Alex, so let me back up for a minute. Our kids are their own individuals. They come to this world with their own personalities. Okay. So even whether we do everything perfectly, which that doesn't exist, but whether we do everything, you know, as great as possible, or we make mistakes along the way, our kids are their own people, and they're going to make their own decisions. And they could grow up and Alex he did grow up in a very, like, ultimately, like, loving home. I mean, my husband is an amazing father, and he had all the things, you know. He was a competitive gymnast, so that was huge throughout his life. I think that saved him in many ways as a younger kid. And so he had a lot going for him. Like, if you were to look at his life too, you would have never guessed that it would have ended where it ended. life tanked very quickly within a year time frame. So he also wasn't a kid that like started using at 10, 11,
Yeah.
12, 13. I mean, with some of these young, it wasn't like that. So anyway, but our kids are their own kids. So I think as parents, we have to understand that first and foremost. But then we have to do our own, we have to look in the mirror as parents too. And am I contributing to this situation? Could there be things I could be doing that's more healthy for my child, more helpful? Like we have to do our own healing as well, because sometimes we bleed on our children. And I guess my point is, in hindsight, when I look back at our situation, I'm like, man, there are some things that I probably could have done differently that would have maybe helped Alex feel a little bit more connected. You know, I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's good. I'm just, you know, sharing out loud, like it's a complicated thing, you know, that
No, it
leads us to
is.
these
It is.
places.
It is. And I think your answer is spot on because we so often want a quick fix. We want like the 3 steps to get rid of the stain on my shirt. Like we want, we want the $1 million overnight from social and we want the 6-pack abs from not, eating correctly. Like it's such an instant gratification society that I think your answer is perfect because I don't think that there is an answer. Like, I talk with people all day long that have massive amounts of trauma and massive amounts of success. And, I even boiled this down yesterday to a gentleman. We were having a business conversation, nothing about prison or trauma. And, he was arguing one way. And I said, well, if we remove the emotion from it and you look at In-N-Out Burger and Chick-fil-A, I mean, they couldn't be further polar opposites. One has beef, one only has chicken, one's closed 1 day a week, right? They couldn't be polar opposites. One was born in California, one was born in the Bible Belt, but both of them were. And so I think the lessons to it is like, how do I take bits and pieces of your armor? How do I take bits and pieces of, your story, your wisdom, and apply it to mine? Because I just really wish that we would say out loud that we're parents. And like our oldest boy, he just turned 14. I've never had a 15-year-old. I've never had a 14-year-old. And so I think that as parents, we're feigning perfection, like we're faking it because social media has told us that there's never any dishes in the sink and everybody looks great filtered in their mirror. And it just isn't the case, right? We all starve ourselves 6 weeks before we're going on vacation, right? Like we're all like telling the nanny to park on the side so that not everybody in the neighborhood knows. Like we're all not using the term housekeeper, so our kids don't think that we're privileged. Like if we would just say these things out loud instead of just being dirtbags, it's so true, right? Like, and I speak that with my wife. Like, if us having a housekeeper doesn't take anything away from you, nothing. And I say this to women. You want to take this other perspective. I used to come home, with my wife, and her whole purpose in life is to be a mother. She says it out loud. She wants to be like that is her God-given ability. And so I would come home and, she would, doubt herself in the early stages of momhood, as all of you gals do. I would say, well, I talked to this lady today who put a needle in her arm. So you didn't do that. There was this other lady who pushed her girlfriend out of a moving vehicle on the highway. You didn't do that. So and she couldn't help but to giggle and be like, I know, but I'm giving you perspective, right? Like we're so hard on ourselves and the things that you're watching on your feed all day and the neighborhood that we all live in, it pushes us to this idea that we're all just full of it. And I really just wish we would just say, hey, I mean, you want to know who I am? Like, you should show up Monday morning right before the kids leave for school. Like, you want to talk about a disaster.
I mean, isn't that so true? And Travis, I feel like everything we're saying right now, it's just, it goes back to we're just human. Yeah. We're totally imperfect. Not a single person has it completely figured out. I mean, I can say genuinely, I did everything with the best of my ability, with the best of intentions, with all my heart put into it, all throughout, raising all my kids. But man, there was so much I didn't know and so much that I was lied to and still so much I don't know and still things I'm getting wrong, even though the worst part is when you become aware of your unhealthy patterns and you're trying to heal through them and you're still getting it wrong. Yep. Sometimes that's even harder than not being aware fully. But that's my point. We are all a work in progress. every single one of us. And it doesn't matter, in any realm of our life, as parents, as spouses, coworkers. I
Mhm.
mean, even, and there's this principle in a therapy that I did at the Suicide Treatment Center called dialectical behavioral therapy. And dialectics is this idea that we're all doing, there's a principle within dialectics that says we're all doing the best we know how at any given time. What that means is, again, that doesn't mitigate accountability, responsibility. It doesn't say that we're necessarily doing it well,
Yeah.
but truly, we are all existing and all functioning in our environments to the best of our ability and emotional maturity at that time. That's just reality. And
So true.
so, yeah, it's not easy. These things that we're talking about human experiences that, yes, like I can see at the root, maybe, what we need, the belonging and significance, and maybe where things went wrong, and we can kind of dissect, but yeah, every situation is different, every person's different. It's not a one size fits all. So I love that you said take pieces of what you hear from people's stories and like, oh, that hit me. Like, that's how we get better and become better and gain more wisdom and heal and all the things.
100%, but I also think it requires us to say it out loud. And I think that's the
Mm.
missing piece is like we're so apt to like the ones that make me laugh are like,
Hide behind the perfect picture.
yes. And it's like, how did like I want to be sad for the sad girls and boys on Instagram, but I'm just not sure what you did first. Did you set up the light ring or did you start crying? Like, were you crying and then you were like, oh shit, I gotta set up the light ring, and then you were like, I came back to cry. I just need to I need you to walk me through it. And I'm not. You were like, hang on, let me open the curtains. Like, no, like, is anyway. So I digress. But
You know what? But what you're saying is we're lacking real. We're
mhm,
lacking real. We're just
yeah,
lacking real raw. Like you said, show up to my house on a Monday morning, show up right before this when I'm scrambling to get
oh
ready. Make sure my hair looks perfect for this.
yeah, so true. Yeah, that right before the
Yeah.
kids. We've got four at the moment, and so
Yeah.
anybody who's getting four kids out of the house, either to school to we have three schools, either to the schools or to the bus stop. Like I want to see you Monday morning, just hair on fire. Like I just that yes. How many F words did we know? So so you
Yes.
talked about it.
Amen.
So the idea of being real comes to
Mhm.
like this idea of you to write a book. I mean, a daunting task, kind of uncomfortable. I'm going through it myself.
Yeah.
Did you struggle? Why did you write it? Let's start there.
God. I mean, okay, so really the real story goes, I met up with a friend for dinner one day. She's a mentor, actually, the director of counseling and social services who I mentioned that brought the Hope Institute. Her and I hadn't seen each other in a year. We met up last summer, and I was sharing part of her story, or part of my story with her about Alex. And she said, Lindsay, you need to write a book. And here's the deal. My husband has said that. I have thought that. I do love to write, but that idea was like one day, like not today, like way down the road, maybe I would do that. Long story short, a couple days, I got home that night, and like I said, I had the whole book. People have told me that, it's crossed my mind, but I was always like, nope, one day. That night, I felt a stronger nudge towards it, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. Like, why do I all of a sudden feel this nudge stronger? And then 2 days later, I'm scrolling Facebook, eating breakfast, just one of those totally random, and I come across an ad that says unleash your book. Long story short, ends me up in this webinar with this lady who helps people write books. And
Mm,
I basically I was like, okay, God, I just felt God like putting these things on my path that I wasn't even searching or seeking, and
yeah.
like just making it happen pretty seamlessly. And so I felt God saying it's time to share your story with the world. So that's what I did. And it was not easy. Oh man. I mean, writing that. So I'm
Right?
writing my second book right now. So the first book was obviously, it was more it's part memoir, part guidebook. So it's like part my story, but also I share other people's stories who have overcome the battle with addiction, suicidal ideation, grief, and life's deepest challenges is what it's really geared towards. So it's part guidebook to helping people come out of their own struggle with those things, but it shares my story. And so that one was very hard to write because it required me to relive in detail. Like, I do write in detail about what I went through, and it's hard. But now I'm on my second book, and yeah, writing a book is not easy, but man, I also think books are life changing. I mean, how many people read a book and it's like they get such good insight from it? I mean, I know years ago when I had severe anxiety in my early 20s. It was a book that saved my life through that. So anyway, yeah, it's worth it.
Cool. And what's the second book on?
So the second book is called Plot Twist: The Freedom You Never Saw Coming. And it is about to go editing. It's almost done. It's almost out of my hands and into editing. And that is all for, so like I said, my heart, I have a deep heart for those in prison. And when I started writing this book, God put it on my heart that we are all prisoners to something. So whether we are in literal prison or not, many of us are prison to our mind, grief, shame, all these things, finances, circumstances, trauma. I mean, all these different things that we go through as humans, we're all a prisoner to something, and usually many things. So this book is all about how to break free from life's prisons. And it's finding freedom, whether you're, like I said, in a literal prison or not, because you can also find freedom. Like, the book talks about how you don't have to be on the other side of your mess. You don't have to actually be beyond your bars. Again, whether literally or figuratively, you can find freedom even in the middle of your mess and peace. And at the center of it, it is God. Yeah. That's
so good. That's so good. I love it. I don't even know where to go from there, to be honest, but I want you to talk to the people sitting in the mud as you would, someone sitting next to you. And just, I make this, and I'll give you some context. I make this statement that I probably have no business making, so I'll let you take it. And I tell women in prison all the time, I say, you can be a drug addict and a good mother. You can be incarcerated and you can be a good mother. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive ideas. What's your message?
You just literally said a dialect. That's another dialectics principle, that two things that seem opposing can both be true. That's exactly what that is. So I can experience pain and joy at the same time. So the pain that I was feeling this morning with my grief, that was very much present. And the joy that I feel that I get to come home to my other kids, very much present. So anyway, I love that. I actually think that's the key to life, is not seeing things in black and white. That I can be an addict and a good human. Both of those things go hand in hand, right? I'm just sitting with that. Like, that is literally, that's a big part of the dialectical behavioral therapy that we do, is helping people learn that two things that seem opposing can both be true. Because I think it's life-changing when we can start to switch our perspective. So gosh, to the person in the mud and in the mess, I think before we even have advice for that person, it's just, I see you. I see how heavy it is and how hard it is. And so here we go, keyword. Life is heavy and hard, and it's amazing and full of so much potential. And not a single person is beyond not having access to that. Doesn't matter what your past is. Doesn't matter what you're going through right now, what the mess is. There is life on the other side, always, for all of us. And both can be true. I can be in the middle of a mess and be living a great life. I mean, that's me. That's the definition of me. Like, I'm constantly in the middle of a mess. I'm human. And I also have a great life. And so I think the other thing I would say, Travis, it just feels like it's coming in strong when I was talking about the gratitude for grief, like the gratitude that I have, like that I had 17 years with my son. There is so much power in changing our mindset from lack, like what we don't have or what we're missing or what we didn't do or what we missed the boat on, to what we do have, what we did get right. Gratitude and lack and abundance cannot coexist together. That's one thing that can't coexist together. And I think gratitude changes everything when we can be grateful for our circumstances, even the hard.
I love it. I love it. I'm grateful for you. I love what you're doing. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. This was fun.
Yes. Have an awesome day.